What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video, and today we're actually gonna do a tier list. So a lot of you have been waiting for this, and I'm finally doing it. So this is on the Arlott update, right? So we're gonna include Arlott here, and we're gonna see where he stands, for me at least, in my opinion. Just a quick disclaimer before we move on to the video. This is my own tier list, so if you have different opinions about the heroes I'm gonna put on a specific tier, you can comment that below and do your own tier list, or tell me where you think that hero belongs, or what tier that hero belongs to. All right, so anyways, yeah, but before we start, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to hit the like button, and of course hit the notification bell as well. All right, so let's start with the XP lane tier list. So the S tier is pretty much like the ban worthy heroes. Like these are like the most often banned. That's gonna be Glue and Joy. Hopefully that's pretty self-explanatory. Like, we've only seen Joy once in MPL Indo, which is, I think, our match versus Evos, and the rest of the other games she's been banned. So that's how annoying and kind of strong Joy is in the current meta. And she's also a flex pick, so you'll see her in other tier lists as well, not just the XP tier list. I'm gonna put Arlott on A tier. I wouldn't say he's really strong. I wouldn't say he's ban worthy as well. He's just okay. Like, he's really prone to hard crowd control. Like, for example, if you pair him up with Lapu, who has immune on his ulti, Arlott can't do anything. Like, even 1v1 can't do anything. The only thing that he needs to rely on is like life stealing from minions if there's a lot of minions nearby. But there are some cases that happens in the river where it's like there's no minions nearby. So how are you gonna lifesteal from that if you're doing a 1v1, right? Just straight up hero to hero. So that's why Arlott is in A tier. I don't think he's I can't really grasp yet. He could be B or A. Like, it's like a close B, I would say. I'm not really like a super big fan of Arlott, but I guess players are just now starting to figure out how to play him. That's why I don't see him being as good as he's supposed to be. So I'm gonna put him in A for now, right, for Arlott. So Edith is gonna be an A as well after the buff on Edith recently. She's actually quite strong. She's a pick-off hero. The only problem with Edith is probably the split push, right? And it really depends on your draft as well. Like, if you don't have a burst but you have an Edith on your team, you're kind of making Edith useless. Like, you want to have a burst of some sort when you have Edith XP on your team. All right, we still have Lapu, who could go to the back line. Fredrin is a flex pick that could also go to the jungle. That's also good in the XP lane still, all right? Still good in the XP lane. Yuzhong could go to the back line, really good on team fights. Mardis is really good against heroes like Kadita, Rome, where you could immune the knock-up and all the petrify and stuff like that. And it's really good also against assassins like Fanny, because now even a knockback can stop like the cable of Fanny with the recent update. Terisla is really good because usually people use Terisla against Glue, right? Against Glue, and who else? I forgot. Esme, Paquito, like just for hard CC. Terisla could also go in the back line actually, if you have Flicker ulti, like Lemon. If you guys saw RQ's game with Lemon, when he kept focusing brands with Terisla, so that's something that you could do. And we also have Grok, who has an immune. Like, a lot of these heroes have an immune, right? Lapu has an immune, Grok has an immune, Benedetta has immune, and she's really mobile as well. That's why she belongs in A tier. So Benedetta is more like a super split type. If you watch Edward, I think that's a good example of how Benedetta should be played. And the damage for Grok is still really good. That's why, because people build physical damage on Grok with like Heptases, Blade of Despair, and then like just one magic resist, so they don't get bursted by mages. But anyways, going to the B tier, we have Thamus, Paquito, Esme, Deroth, Uranus, Masha, Baksha, Phovius, and Chu. These are like borderline almost non-meta. Even with the buff on Esme, I don't think she's strong enough to be compared to these heroes, right? In my opinion, I don't think she's strong enough. It feels like the team fight meta is still stronger than the split push meta from before. All right. The only difference is these guys don't have immune, while Benedetta has immune, and she's she's way more agile than both these two heroes. That's why she belongs in A tier, and these two heroes belong in B tier. Thalmus is good early game, but as soon as you get to mid to late, he kind of gets like almost useless. D-Roth is a good combo with Pakito if you want minus armor, and Hayabusa as well, or Ling, Fanny. Like if you have a physical jungler, D-Roth is pretty decent against glue as well, so that's why he belongs in this B tier. But very squishy. He's not like a type of XP where he could face check the bushes and give you vision. He's more of like a enabler slash damage. So Uranus, like I said, more on the split push type, not really that good, but depends on the draft as well. Masha depends on the draft as well. Like if they don't have, like Carry is so popular these days, and Claude, and those two heroes like are pretty decent against Masha. Before Beatrix was really popular, so Masha was even more popular because Beatrix just gets chased by Masha all the time, right? But now with Kari and Claude being so popular, and even Moskov, who could do a decent job microing Masha, she's not as good as before, right? Just because of those reasons. Baksha is like a close C tier for me. You could use Baksha to actually counter Esme, obviously, and Yu Zhong in a way. Yeah, Yu Zhong in a way. But nobody uses Baksha, so it's actually a really close C tier for me. Yeah, more on like more pick because of to counter, more pick to counter. Same with Phoveus. If the enemy team has a 1-1, Phoveus is not as good as before because if you CC Phoveus, it's not like you can jump anymore. If you hard CC Phoveus, he cannot jump anymore. Like the Phoveus before, even if you have Franco ulti, he has a way of dodging it with his ulti, but not anymore. They fixed it. So Phoveus, that's why Phoveus is not as strong as before. Chu, on the other hand, he fits more on the roamer role. That's why he's gonna be in B tier. He's just okay in the XP lane. He's more of like a kind of like an Edith, but I would say Edith has a way longer or easier, I would say easier mechanics than Cho. So, but Cho is more mobile, so he's gonna belong in B tier. For the other heroes, hopefully it's self-explanatory. I put Alice on D tier because you most likely need like a lot of mana, or you need the blue buff in order to maximize Alice, and that's why she's pretty good in the jungle. We'll see her later on in the other tier list. Hopefully these are explanatory right here. They're either they cannot face check for a C tier, they're too squishy, they're just damagers. XP laners are supposed to be like zoners, but most of these guys are like kind of like an assassin, or they scale too long like Aldous, right? Or they just don't make hard impacts like Hylos. Argus is more of a damager, Freya is more of a damager, Badang is more of a damager, Hilda is like almost a yeah, these guys are like mostly damagers. Same with Gwyn. Xborg, the only reason why Xborg is not as good, he's in C tier, because there's a lot of Farsas, there's a lot of Eves that could burst his armor, and his damage, it feels a little off. That's why it just doesn't do as well as before for some reason. I don't know why. I thought they buffed Xborg, but I tried Xborg like not too long ago, and he doesn't do as much damage as before for some reason. But anyways, yeah. Moving on to the next tier list, we have the Marksman or Gold Lane tier list. All right, 1-1 is still S tier. Like the fact that her survivability is just so strong, and the only way to counter her is pretty much like heroes, assassin heroes, obviously. You have Faramis with the ulti, right? You have Lolita's shield, that's one way. You have Lunox who can go light form. So there's only like a few that you could really counter 1-1 with. Farsa and Eve is okay, but Farsa is not, because Farsa could burst out 1-1. Okay, so those are the ways to counter 1-1. But she's still really hard to deal with and really high outplay potential, so that's why she is still in S tier in my opinion. On A tier, we have Moskov against Moskov is really good against Glue. Glue is really popular right now. Carry, Fredrin is really popular right now. That's why Carry's up here. Harith is pretty good. This is draft conditional. If you have like a physical roamer or a physical jungler, then it's good to pick Harith. When the enemy team picks Eve or Farsa, so it's harder for the enemy mage to hit you. Melissa is good if the enemy team don't have any backline or potential. Like they don't have a Yuzhong, they don't have a Lapu to go in the backline. Usually you have free hit. You're just gonna auto attack the whole time, the whole team fight. If the enemy team don't have any sort of backline or poke like Farsa, um, Farsa Eve. Yeah, Melissa's really good. Now Claude, since like I said earlier, Eve and Farsa are still really popular in the meta. They use Claude to counter that. Plus, Glue is also popular, and Claude could actually run away from Glue because his movement speed is really fast, and that's why Claude is up here in A tier. For Lunox, the reason why she's here is sometimes to counter 1-1. If you have a physical jungler, it's good as well. Against a Glue, it's good. You could light form Glue's ulti, and you could lifesteal all that health back up. So that's why Lunox is picked, and has high survivability rate, and you could rush Lord with Lunox. For Beatrix, Beatrix is like more of a neutral marksman, one of the safer picks, but pretty similar to Melissa in a way, where she's really prone to backline pressure. If the enemy team has like a Lapu, Yuzhong, it's a little bit harder to play Beatrix. Like a Farsa Eve, also a little bit harder to play Beatrix. Brody's here because Brody is really good in the laning phase. But if the enemy team has like an Atlas, Farsa Eve, it's kind of hard to position with Brody because he doesn't have a dash. The only way he could dash is if he second skills into a minion or into an enemy so he could dash away. So that's the hard part about Brody. Alright, Leslie kind of fell off because, like I said, Yuzhong and Lapu are still popular, and Farsa and Eve are still really, really strong in the meta. And just easy to catch, right? Easy to catch, really prone to backline pressure, and plus she is single target, right? That's the difference between Melissa and Leslie. The good part about Leslie is she's true damage like a carry, right? So you could, no matter what you build in the later stages of the game, if you get farmed up and the enemy team don't have any backline pressure, Leslie's super strong. Right, but if you have an enemy Faramis and you're only single target, it's gonna take too long for you to deal DPS since you don't have enough to counter the Faramis ulti. So that's the hard part about Leslie. Irithel is not as good. You could use Irithel to counter 1-1 in laning, but still really prone to backline pressure, and the damage is not as good. Hanabi is gonna be in B tier. I think if you draft correctly with Hanabi, and the enemy team don't have Farsa, even if the enemy has a lot of CC, Hanabi is okay because of the shield. So if you draft like actually I'm not going to talk about the draft because we draft Hanabi in a specific way and I don't want to talk about it. But anyways, if you can figure it out, Hanabi is actually pretty damn strong if you draft it correctly. Alright? And if you meet your win conditions and you know your win conditions, Hanabi is actually pretty damn good. I know people are going to make fun of it because we lost to RQ twice using Hanabi, but I know people have doubts, but I see what I see in scrims, and if it works in scrims against other MPL teams, it will probably work in the MPL tournament as long as we execute correctly. Clint is gonna be here in B tier, Bruno as well, Valentina. People are starting to play Valentina gold lane. I'm not gonna say which teams, but yeah, it's pretty decent. Nathan got buffed recently, but surprisingly, not a lot of teams are picking him. Popol is like a close C for me. Like, he's good in laning, but that's about it. If he doesn't snowball, you're kind of screwed. Paquito and Yuzhong are here because some teams do a double fighter meta still. If they have like a Ling in the jungle or like a really hard scaling jungler, they could use Paquito and Yuzhong jungle, but it's just okay, not that good. Chang is here. I don't know why, but there are teams that play Chang'e Gold. It's really rare, so that's why it belongs in C tier. Mia, I'm kind of confused about. Like, it's a close B tier, I would say. I don't know why other teams are not picking it. Maybe because there's a lot of Farsas, there's a lot of Glues, there's a lot of Eves, and yeah, I guess the junglers are just too tanky. Zilong is here. I think Zilong is like a close D tier. I don't know why teams are picking Zilong gold lane. No offense to the teams that pick Zilong gold lane, but I'm just not a big fan of it. I just don't understand the point. Why? Like, is the reason why you could itemize quickly and then you could burst the enemy marksman quick? I don't know, but it just doesn't make sense to me. Why not just If that's the reason for picking Zilong, why not just use him in the jungle? Maybe, I don't know. Or maybe XP. I'm not sure really what the reason is for picking Zilong. But anyways, moving on. Layla, hopefully it's self-explanatory. So we're on the jungle tier list now. We have Fredrin still on the S tier. Fredrin, I would say for me, is actually a close A tier. It's like really close, borderline. Joy S tier, because of the immune on second skill, and if you execute Joy correctly and you go to the back line with her ulti, Joy is really scary. Fanny is still really, really good if you draft correctly with Fanny. If you have a really good Fanny player, really scary still. And of course, for A tier, we have the immune or the really hard to catch heroes. So you have Hayabusa ulti that could immune when you cannot hit him while he's in his ulti state, and really good against even Farsa, which is really popular right now, and is pretty decent against Glue because he's hard to catch. Same with Ling, right? If the enemy team picks Glue, Ling is pretty decent because Glue cannot go like onto the wall and ult you. Barat has an immune on his ulti, Chu has an immune on second skill, and yeah, he has CC as well. So if you want to retry, you could kick and then retry while you're doing it. You have Akai who has the Hurricane Dance. You get the point. He has an immune. He has the Purify, semi-Purify for Akai. Grok has the first skill with the immune, right? Martis has the immune with the second skill. So hopefully this is, you see the trend here on the A tier. Like they all have some sort of immune or some escape ability, so they don't get zoned out on turtle fights. For B tier, we're starting to see a lot of Alice junglers, right? Specifically Blacklist. We saw on MPLPH, Weiss took out the Alice jungle, which is actually quite good because Alice really needs the blue buff, I think, for her to shine. And what they're doing is like they go to the jungle and sometimes they help clear mid, which gives Alice even more stacks faster, right? And then she just becomes stronger that way. But in turtle fights, it's a little bit harder in the early stages of the game. So you just have to meet your conditions with Alice. Paquito is starting to rise again because of the buff recently, right? Benedetta has the immune. The reason why Benedetta is only in B tier and not in A tier is because she doesn't deal enough damage, right? Compared to these guys, I would say. Lancelot tank is starting to get popular, so you could use that as well. It's a niche pick, but if you're into that, if you're a Lancelot player and you don't want to get invaded, go Lancelot tank. Amon is here because you could counter Frederian with Amon as long as there's no enemy Eve. I think Amon is actually pretty decent, right? Karina's still here, really fast farming. The problem is there's a lot of Eve players, and she doesn't have immune. Alright, Baksha's still here, really tanky. Again, no immune. Hanzo's there in B tier because to counter Fredrin and heroes like Akai, as long as the enemy team don't have Natalia or any backline pressure, Hanzo is actually pretty decent against really tanky heroes. We have Bauman here. Bauman is like a close C tier. Ever since they nerfed his ulti, he hasn't been as good. He doesn't have immune as well. So, and there's a lot of Eve players or even Lilia players that could just zone him out. So that's why Bauman is not as good as before. Hellkurt, you can counter Hellkurt. You can counter Hayabusa with Hellkurt. If Hayabusa ultis into you and then your first skill out, you could use Hayabusa. You could use Hellkurt for that and dodge Hayabusa ulti. It's almost like a flicker in a way. Yeah, you're treating it as a flicker. Lunox jungle is good against Glue. You've seen Kyrie use this back in M4, and also pretty decent against Hayabusa as well. And really decent against tanky heroes because her burst is pretty good. Alright, we have Valentina jungle, which we've only seen from like most of the time Wise, right? And Gwyn jungle as well. So these two heroes, they're there because of Blacklist. I think Valentina's only good if the enemy team picks like an Akai. Yeah, like if you get a really good ulti. Valentina jungle is definitely viable. Gwyn jungle is still decent because she has an immune and ulti, and you have a pretty good knockup, hard CC on her knockup. Julian is starting to come back up ever since the buff on him, so he's actually pretty good. The only problem with Julian jungle is once you've used all your skills, good luck. That's all I'm gonna say. Good luck. So you better use it carefully. So that's a problem with Julian. That's why he's not an A tier. For C tier, we have heroes that are really prone to hard CC. All right. So we have Arlott, Leomord, hard CC. Saber, once you get to late game, kind of falls off. Gushin, really hard burst, but once you mess up your combo, you're kind of screwed. Alucard, prone to CC. Aldous, prone to CC. Harley, you need to snowball. If you don't snowball, late game, you're kind of screwed. Xborg, there's a lot of Farsa players, and there's a lot of Eve players. You can get, your armor just gets depleted so fast, and his damage output is just not enough. Alright, you have a Sun, who's a niche pick. Sun, I would guess, doesn't deal enough damage to... Well, if you build him damage, he's good against tanks. But then again, this is a team game. So you're probably not going to... It's really hard to free hit with Sun. So I don't see him going back up here in B tier even. So we have Gatot. Recently, we saw a Gatot jungle in MDL. I think it's just okay. You could last hit the objectives with your ulti, because they get CC'd if they're near if you ulti into the turtle pit or the lord pit, everybody gets CC'd and you have your free time to retribution the lord or turtle. We have Aldous. He's probably here because of blacklist, but he's not that good. Almost the same thing like as an Alice, but he scales a lot slower than Alice, I would say. Yeah, scales a lot slower than Alice. Like Wise, like how Wise plays him is jungle and then clear mid, help clear mid sometimes with the mid laner, and you get more stacks that way, right? We have Alpha, prone to CC, Jawhead, prone to CC, D-Ross, prone to CC, Freya, prone to CC, YSS, and Roger and Granger. These are the only 3 marksmen that could be technically viable in the jungle role, but they're not that good because I guess their farming speed, or there's the speed of their farming is just not fast enough to keep up with the jungle emblem, or the mobility of these guys. And then we have D tier. We have Kaja, Yin, Thamus, Claude, Nathan, Kimi. These are like non-meta picks, but are possible picks that other teams could do. All right, so let's move on to the next tier list. We have the Mage mid lane tier list. All right. So we have Eve, obviously really strong. You cannot cancel her ulti anymore. The only problem with Eve is she doesn't have burst. Once you build Radiant, you're kind of good to go. You need to build Glowing Wand to make her to make her effective in the poking region. For Farsa, the burst is really strong. I think Farsa's like... I don't know why people are not banning Farsa, but I really think she's a viable ban, right? Valentina, obviously, still a viable ban. Promise. Hopefully that's self-explanatory. We have Joy mid, who's also really good. Almost like a Joy jungle. If you build Joy damage, you could just go in the backline. And plus, you have Vengeance if you're a Joy mid. If you're a Joy jungler, you're not going to have Vengeance. If you're a Joy mid, you have Vengeance plus the damage. So it's quite insane. Kadita is really strong because it's hard to cancel her ulti, right? It's hard to disrupt her ulti if you don't have Ruby, if you don't have Grok, if you don't have Mardis. Yeah, and her burst, you could pretty much like burst about any hero once you get level 4. Her scaling is quite fast, so that's why Kadita is getting banned. And the pressure that she gives when you're not showing in the map is just really strong. Right, that's why Kadita is in the S tier. We have Lunox, a lot of glues recently, and really good burst, so Lunox is there. Lilia is pretty decent against Faramis because of the AoE damage, but not as priority in the current meta. Savior is really good for the backline, but he scales really slow. That's why he's only in the A tier. Julian, like I said earlier, since you have an extra spell, you're not a Julian jungle. You have an extra escape ability if you have Flicker, or some Julians take Petrify. Not really sure why. I would rather have Julian with Flicker, to be honest, for more survivability. Kagura is on the rise because of Kadita. You could you could purify the Kadita knockup, or any CC with Kagura second skill. So that's why Kagura is here on the A tier. For B tier, like some of these are like really niche picks as well. We have Sicilian, who scales really slow. You need to get to really late game if you want to make Sicilian really effective. Selena is good for vision, but since so many tanky heroes now, it's just really hard. Like the front line is just so hard to penetrate. All the heroes are tanky that Selena becomes almost useless in the later stages of the game. Cyclops got buffed recently, so he's gonna belong here in B tier. Lo Yi, this is actually a pretty underrated pick for me because the teleport could go like from one side of the map to the next. So I'm thinking like if you could execute this correctly with this with uh with really good heroes that fit with Lo Yi teleport, like Atlas, Lolita, like really hard engage that could surprise the enemy. It's really good, but it's hard to execute. But no teams do it, or no teams are willing to practice it. But maybe that's because Lo Yi scales really slow as well, and plus her mobility is not that good. We have Saber here and Gushin if you need like some sort of burst. We have Mathilda here if you need some sort of shield or if you want to babysit the gold lane. We have Bane here, who I don't know if Bane got buffed recently, but Mage Bane is actually still not bad. Knockback is a lot stronger now since he has sharks that could actually knock back the enemies and is really good on team fights and has high sustain. Kimmy, Nathan are actually borderline C, almost C, but they're not picked as often. They really fit more in the gold lane. That's why they belong here in the B tier. They're just really, I would say, close to non-meta picks. Harley, you need to snowball late game, kind of useless plus single target. It with his ulti, right? You can only kill one. If you end up not killing that, you're kind of useless the rest of the team fight. For C, we have Gord, Nana, Eudora, Phoveus, Chang'e, Vale, Harith, and Valir. Alright, hopefully these are self-explanatory. I don't have to explain much. Valir, not enough damage. Gord, not enough mobility. Nana is actually like a borderline B, I would say. Maybe not enough mobility and easy to kill, but her Molina is really annoying. So Eudora, not enough mobility, but has good burst. But late game, you probably cannot burst anyone if if the front line is hard to penetrate. Phoveus, ever since the CC fix on his ulti is not there anymore, he's not as good. Probably used to counter pick like a 1-1 or someone that has a lot of dashes. Chang'e, mobility probably, but has really good wave clear, but also really close to non-meta. Vale, I think Vale is just here because he's hard to execute. You really need to hit your combos correctly. Harith, you need a blue buff, most likely. If you don't have the blue buff, you kind of struggle. So if you're gonna share your blue buff with your jungler and your gold lane, even like it just gives the team a harder time. You're distributing the buffs way it's way tougher to distribute the buffs. All right, for D tier we have Rafaela mid lane sometimes, but it's very like rare. Aurora, not enough mobility, and people are just so tanky. Vexana, I don't think she deals enough damage. Odette, really prone to CC. Diggy mid lane, this is mid lane by the way. Diggy mid lane is not that good, but people build Diggy full damage because of mobility. Alice mid lane, you need the blue buff, kind of like a Harith, and plus she scales super slow. We have Zas, no mobility, and really easy to dodge his ulti, so that's why he's in D tier. The roamer tier list, we're starting with the S tier. Of course, Kaja with the suppress, right? Easy pick off, and really good combo with Farsa, carry, who's really popular in this current meta. Kadita, roamer is really strong, like I said. At level 4, she could burst about anyone, and her backline pressure is really strong if you don't show yourself around the map. Alright, Hilda is going to be an A tier. This is more of a situational pick. If the enemy team has an assassin, you could use Hilda to disrupt the jungler, an assassin jungler. Alright, but really effective against assassin junglers only. If you pick Hilda against like tank junglers, it's kind of hard to pull off. Franco, because of the suppress, for Joy, for example, and for pickoff as well. So that's why Franco's here. Grok for the immune and vision. Chu for the immune and vision and playmaking. Edith, God damn it, I can't say her name correctly. Like you could pronounce it so many different ways. Edith, there you go, Edith. For playmaking and sustain with her ulti, which deals pretty decent damage, obviously. Ruby is there for the CC, like maybe against Fanny. Also good for like pickoffs, Ruby, and has AoE CC. So that's why Ruby's actually pretty decent in the current meta, and not a lot of teams are picking her up for some reason. And I think like teams should prioritize her a little more. We have Natalia Roamer. which is really good if you have like a mage gold laner, or if you have a mage jungler and a mage gold laner and you need some sort of physical damage. You have Natalia there, who can give you a lot of info, has backline potential as well because you don't know where she is. We have Atlas. If the Diggy's banned, I think Atlas is really good, and the Franco is on the rise, and Kaja is on the rise. Like, Atlas is really good against these two heroes. You just need to worry about Diggy, right? Atlas is also really good against Lolita because you could cancel her ulti with your ulti, right? Lolita is good though if you're against heroes like Estes, Faramis for AoE stun, and has really good shield against carry, single targets like carry and 1-1. You could shield those out. So that's why Lolita's here. Kufra is also good against Franco and Kaja because his counter engage is actually really good. Diggy is good against these two heroes right here. These three heroes, actually. Or like any type of CC, except for the suppress. Diggy's good against Kadira. Diggy's good against Edis, Atlas, Lolita, and Kufra. It's more on the babysitting. If the enemy team don't have Farsa or a savior, like anybody that could burst you out from long range, Diggy's actually pretty decent. And you can babysit the gold lane super hard. Alright, we have Mathilda, who is like a close A tier for me. It really depends on your draft, I guess. But not a lot of teams are picking up on Mathilda. You have Akai, who's usually seen in the jungle, but you could actually use Akai in as the roamer as well. I don't know why not a lot of teams are picking that, because Akai counters Joy super hard, right? Or even other assassins super hard. And you could zone out the enemy. Like, if the enemy team plays, for example, Fredrin jungle, and you're a roamer Akai, as long as you get level 4 by that by 2 minutes on that last wave, and your mid laner goes to XP lane to get level 4 as well, you could Hurricane Dance the Fredrin jungler away, and your jungler would be free for a retribution, right? So I don't know why not a lot of teams are picking up on Akai. This could be a lot higher. Actually, it could be A. Rafael is here, just not as effective. The impact is just really small. Angela is here because you cannot face check with Angela. You're gonna force your jungler or your XP to face check with Angela. Estes is here because of Blacklist. Faramis is here. Faramis is actually a close C for me as a roamer, right? Because if you play Faramis as a roamer, you just don't get your items quick enough, in my opinion, right? So it's like a close C. Baksha is here because of Hilda, right? You could use Baksha, roam to counter the Hilda, and anti-invade, pretty much. Anti-invade. And anti-sustain if the enemy team has like a Yuzhong, Esme, or of some sort. And plus he's really tanky, so you could face check however much you want. You could bait out Baksha really hard and soak so much damage with his ulti. You have Johnson, who's a really rare pick nowadays, but Kadira is so popular that I'm actually kind of surprised that Johnson's not being picked more often recently. Also, like, not a lot of teams are picking up on Diggy, so Johnson should be stronger if teams are not picking up Diggy, right? So yeah, it's actually really scary if you have a really good driver Johnson and there's no Diggy around. But I guess junglers are just way too tanky, and then counter engages are just too strong for Johnson. That's why he belongs in C tier. Valier is also an anti-invade against Hilda, so that's why he's in C tier. The only problem with Valier, squishy, no mobility, no face check potential, so that's why he's below Baksha. Selena Rome is, again, like I said earlier, Selena just struggles against really tanky front lines, and they just eat out the traps, and she doesn't do anything like towards mid lane to late game if you don't snowball. If you snowball, then it's good for you, but it's hard to meet those conditions in the current meta. Jawhead is really prone to CC. If you mess up your engage, you're kind of screwed. There's a lot of Eve players recently, Lilia, that could slow him down. And plus, even if you do set up, like, there's a lot of really good counter engages against a Jawhead. But Jawhead Leash is actually really good since his first skill damage is just so high. Mincy is more of a rare pick. Like, you could pick this against like a Lancelot, Wan, who cannot use her passive in his ulti. I don't think Mincy has been revamped yet, because there's a revamped Mincy that I've been waiting for, but I haven't seen it yet. Belric is here. AoE stun on turtle fights and lord fights with his ulti, but scales really slow for me, for Belric, right? And for D tier, we have Hylos, Minotaur, Tigreal, Florine, Carmilla, Sylvana, and Gatot. These are just like really non-meta picks. I think the old Minotaur is better, to be honest, with the triple knockup ulti. Tigreal, hopefully it's self-explanatory. You could disrupt his ulti and cancel it. Hylos just doesn't do much impact because there's a lot of tank junglers recently. And before, when Hylos was meta, Hylos was like an invade type of roamer where you could just go to the jungle and just be annoying and have revitalize and just have your second skill on, right? Florine doesn't heal enough, not enough mobility, not enough CC. Carmilla has pretty decent ulti, really good against like heroes like Estes, I guess, and Framis, but that's about it. Just doesn't do enough. I don't think her mobility is not that good because it only gives you movement speed, like a little boost of movement speed. But after you use that, you're kind of screwed if you do get caught and if you walk into the wrong bush. Sylvana Rome, this was like a long time ago. It's more like I feel like if you do Sylvana Rome, it's like a suicide mission. Almost. Suicide mission. So many teams are really good at counter engaging now, and it's really hard to burst out. Even if you do catch someone in your ulti, it's hard to burst them because the meta right now is just hard tank, like 3 front lines, and then just a hyper carry on the gold lane, right? And then damage, really high damage on the mid lane. So that's why Sylvana belongs on the D tier. Alright, but anyways, that's all for the tier list. If I miss anything, if I miss any hero, I apologize because I'm not gonna lie, I kind of rushed through all this tier list. But yeah, anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you guys have a different opinion on which hero belongs on which tier, comment that below in the comment section. But before you leave, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell and the like button. Thank you guys for watching, and I'm out. Peace.